This is my third and final lecture of 3 on philosophy, this time on ethics and applied ethics. We have discussed in my previous 2 lectures on atheist philosophies that atheism by itself is not a philosophy. However, this lecture series is providing glances at some philosophies and this evening ethical systems that do not require a transcendent belief as a framework and are very compatible with a naturalistic outlook. We atheists have thought our way out of belief in God, the supernatural, life after death, and the defunct theist ethical systems circulating in present-day societies. But we cannot live in a void. We are still active members of society and need to choose a cohesive way of life and then to express ourselves through it. It is not enough to discard ideas we decide are outworn and harmful. We have an obligation to ourselves to discover new values that we can embrace. It is important to look at and study crucial thinkers and philosophical schools past and present to help us choose our individual life stances. We can take elements from these philosophies to incorporate them into our daily lives and decisions if we find they assist, reinforce, and support us. It is very important to understand the various stances that are available as we proceed in our quest to forge new values and lifestyles. The ideas that have served people in the past, as well as some of the thinking circulating in the present day, can be reworked, rethought, and reevaluated for incorporation into the complex and often bewildering choices available to us in contemporary society. As the existential philosophers have pointed out, not making a choice is still a choice. It is my opinion that each atheist has a responsibility to choose between various ideas and then apply those choices to his or her life. We are not prescriptive but descriptive. Each secular person, we believe, should be willing to become his own philosopher. We will not become fully realized ethical humans by taking a pill or looking exclusively to science. Society has produced many moralizers, but not much morality. The thinkers we discuss can help lead us on to more moral, humane, and rational ethical choices and happier lives. Ethics, applied ethics, and human rights. What are ethics and moral theory? Metaethics tries to identify what is the good, what kind of properties make up the good. It seeks to determine where moral principles come from and what they mean. Metaethics examines the role of reason, the will of God, and the meaning of many ethical terms such as the good in an effort to provide a framework for ethics. Normative ethics attempts to arrive at a moral standard which can distinguish right from wrong. It is concerned with finding rules for governing human conduct and action. Applied or practical ethics examines controversial topics such as abortion, animal rights, and stem cell research in an attempt to find solutions to issues which involve basic rights: the right to self-rule, the right to be free from pain. The question of what constitutes personhood is involved in the debates concerning practical ethics. Metaethics plays a role in applied ethics too, as it examines where moral principles come from and what they mean. This lecture is divided into 2 sections. The first will be a discussion devoted to the inadequacy of a theistic ethical system, with a consideration of the 3 main value systems employed in normative ethics. It will examine systems of normative ethics in an effort to determine whether there are value systems which can be sustained without supernatural beliefs. There will be a discussion of some contemporary ethical theories that are currently of interest to scholars and secular thinkers. The second section will discuss applied ethics and deal with the difficulties in arriving at a consensus concerning ethical procedures among disparate cultures and value systems of different countries. Some of the areas discussed will be bioethics, animal rights, right to die, abortion, and circumcision. That the Christian Bible both the Old and New Testaments, is an inadequate source for a genuine moral theory has been noted so often that to repeat it seems gratuitous. However, at present, people the world over are reading the Bible in one translation or another, and many of them believe the Bible is inerrant. Religious fundamentalists think that reading the Bible and interpreting it correctly with the help of men inspired by God provides a guide to leading a moral existence. Biblical principles for ethical behavior are vague, and when subjected to scrutiny, do not appear to be much help to humans struggling to create a moral code for themselves, families, and communities. There are the 10 Commandments, only 5 or 6 dealing with applied ethics. There is the precept, do unto others as you would have done unto you. The Sermon on the Mount, purportedly preached by the historical Jesus in the New Testament, contains guides that are centered on future reward. It has been noted that the Old Testament approves of slavery, rape, ethnic killing, and more. The history of Christianity is riddled with cruelty and intolerance, with well-documented records from such atrocities as the Inquisition, Calvin's Geneva, and the Crusades. Christianity is not the only religion that has a history of intolerance and cruelty. The list is long and shameful. Another guide for Christian ethical behavior is the divine command theory, a deontological ethical idea debated by theologians to this day. A deontological ethical system states that the rightness or wrongness of an action depends on its intrinsic qualities rather than its consequences. Socrates, the 5th century Greek philosopher, disposed of the philosophical merits of divine command with impeccable logic. Plato records that Socrates was going to court one day when he ran into the prosecutor Euthyphro, who was in the process of prosecuting his own father for murdering a laborer. Because Greek culture places its first value on the family, Euthyphro was being criticized by many Athenian citizens. In the Euthyphro dialogue, as it is known, Socrates questions Euthyphro, asking him if he thinks he is doing something immoral. Euthyphro explains that he believes himself an expert at interpreting the God's wishes. He attempts a defense of the divine command theory. We humans know what is good for us because God tells us what is good. But Socrates strikes at the illogic of divine command. Is an action a good thing because God recognizes the good and commands it? Or is it good because God commands it? Either answer creates a dilemma for the theologian, and Christian thinkers have been struggling with very limited success to reconcile the Euthyphro problem for centuries. First, if God recognizes that a thing is good and then commands it, the source of goodness is not God, and the foundation of ethics is located outside God. Logical reasoning opens the door for a secular ethics. Secondly, if it is good because God commands it, then the theist must admit that she has adopted a moral system in which anything goes. Bertrand Russell, the brilliant 20th century philosopher, had this to say concerning divine command. If the only basis is God's decrees, it follows that they might just as well have been the opposite of what they are. No reason except caprice could have prevented the omission of all the knots from the Decalogue. Kierkegaard, the 19th century Christian existentialist, carried the divine command premise to its logical conclusion by praising Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son according to God's command. Kierkegaard regarded Abraham's obedience as a leap of faith necessary for a true believer to take. Both the Bible and divine command are inadequate as linchpins of moral guidance. Religious morality is not merely unsatisfactory, but is sometimes malevolent, particularly if it is dogmatic and rigid. It is obvious that a secular moral theory is not merely possible, but could be desirable. At present, there are 3 normative philosophies which stand out and are of interest to secular thinkers. This lecture will also include social contract theories and discuss a few exceptional thinkers of the present day. The first normative school is virtue ethics, going back to the ancient Greeks, and most fully described by Aristotle, a philosopher from 4th century Greece. Virtue ethics locates moral being in the self. It is a philosophy that posits being rather than doing. It consists of 3 principles: arete, or excellence, phronesis, or practical wisdom, and eudaimonia, human flourishing. Practicing to embody certain virtues for their own sake rather than for personal gain or benefit will help the virtuous person act morally when decisions must be made for action. Aristotle identified 9 virtues that were most compatible with excellence: wisdom, prudence, justice, fortitude, courage, liberality, magnificence, magnanimity, and temperance. The most important of the 9 virtues is wisdom, which includes practical wisdom. Each of the virtues represents the golden mean between 2 vices. Moderation in all things was a necessary component of Aristotle's virtue ethics. Aristotle believed that the individual possessed of arete, excellence, and phronesis, practical wisdom, could attain eudaimonia, flourishing, exclusively within the context of the community, which was the polis, the Greek city-state. Eudaimonia entailed attaining the good life. Each citizen was obligated to choose a mean which was right for him. Aristotle's theories have had a great deal of influence on legal questions through the centuries. Virtue ethics did not allow one to claim innocence or ignorance if caught in an immoral act, such as stealing. If the accused was forced to steal by the threat of violence or death, or made an honest mistake, then Aristotle believed she should not be punished. But he maintained that people make conscious decisions when they act. Alasdair MacIntyre has been one of the strongest contemporary advocates of virtue theory. His book, After Virtue, 1929, asserts that citizens should focus on the community's moral health and welfare and less on individuality and self-fulfillment. He believes that moral certainty has been eroded by philosophers such as A.J. Ayer, the 20th century logical positivist, and by David Hume, the famous 18th century skeptic. He maintains that contemporary humans live in a diminished world of atheists, bureaucrats, and therapists. Another well-known contemporary virtue theory philosopher is Martha Nussbaum, who finds the theory applicable to capability approach and international development. Amartya Sen is one of the most important proponents of this theory. Aristotle's virtue ethic seems most compatible with small, intellectually active communities such as the polis in ancient Greece, rather than the large urban metropolises of the present day.